Hey folks, welcome to the shop. I'm Wes, your host, and today we're going to be going over how to install the brand new Redline Guru rest. And there's no other better place that I would like to show you guys on how to do this than with Derrick, the manager here at Sunrise Archery at my local shop. And the reason why we're doing it here is because, again, we always pressure you guys to go to your local shop, trust them with the equipment to install on your bow. And for me, although I can do this at home, I have lost a little bit of trust in my own home shop. And I'm usually coming here to have him help me with my center shot, so why not have him show us exactly how to set up this rest on one of my bows, the Omen. Now I have a QAD on there now. We're going to change that quick, fast, in a hurry. First thing we want to go real quick before I hand it over to him is just all the stuff that we have in the box when you buy this rest. And as you can see here, we have the rest itself. It has your launcher, and then you have your pig hide. Now that pig hide's not installed on the launcher, so that's something that we're going to show you as well. And then you have your tools. You have your quick attach here for your cable, so your down cable will attach to your activation cord here. You have the bolt to install it on your bow itself, and then you have a couple pads on how you'd want to put that for where this rest comes down, or the launcher comes down, and your arrow would rest on the shelf of your riser. So when you get it in your box, you get everything that you need. So we're going to hand it right over to Derrick. He's going to show us exactly how this rest should be set up on this bow, and go over a few tips to make sure that you get this rest set up on your bow properly.
Hey everyone, Derrick Vaughn here at Sunrise Archery. Today we're going to go over the new Guru rest from Redline. We're going to be installing it on this PSE Omen here. We're going to go over some of the features, ease of setup. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the center shot on the bow as is, because we're using a QAD, which is a similar style of rest, both cable driven. Wes says this bow's shooting pretty good, so I'm going to just check the center shot, see where he's at for knock height as well. Try to get it similar as long as it's in an acceptable spot. So we're going to go over to the vise and start with that. Most of these bows nowadays, the center shot's somewhere 13/16, 7/8, in that range is pretty acceptable. So we're going to take a scale here, see where we're at. He's right in between those two numbers. I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm going to see where we're at for a level. Looks like he's got this bow maybe an 1/8 inch knock high, which from my experience with these cable driven rests is pretty typical. So we'll start there with the new rest and see how she shoots. Very critical on these PSEs with these last chance presses, these new limb lock legs they use. With these past parallel limbs, we've had issues with these bows jumping out of presses in the past. So these are a nice tool to have for these PSEs and some of the other beyond parallel bows. All right, first thing I'm going to do on this rest is install that pig hide. It does have a little bit of thickness to it, so I want to get that on there before I set my center shot and the height of the rest. That way I don't have to redo everything once it's on there. I always like to clean the launcher with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. That way the adhesive sticks a lot better. I'm not super familiar with this stuff, but from what I hear, it's supposed to be a lot longer lasting than the felt you typically get on other arrow rests. All right, we're going to go ahead and bolt her on. I always like to push the rest as far forward as possible to get that flush flit on the back of the riser, so we're going to use the front hole on this particular bow. Obviously not every bow has that, but if it's an option, it's one I like to use. That just ensures that the rest doesn't get jarred up and down if it takes a fall or a bump. All right, I'm going to go ahead and set the level first. Wes was telling me that the arrow for the other rest was actually a larger diameter, so we're going to go ahead and set this pretty close to level initially, see how it shoots and go from there. Go ahead and bump that up a bit. One of the things I like about this rest compared to some of the competitors is that you can set it dead level and know that that arrow is going to stay there throughout the draw cycle. Because as this arrow rest activates, there is no hitch in the launcher whatsoever. Never moves. Some of the other rests, as you draw, it actually pivots and hitches and lifts the arrow a little bit. So that's a nice feature with this rest. We're going to go ahead and start it right there. We're maybe a 30-second knock high, pretty close to level right here. I'm going to go ahead and measure our center shot and see where we're at compared to the other rest. We're just outside, so we're going to move her in a bit. I always like to check the center shot at the front and the back of the riser just to kind of make sure we're running parallel to the riser. That's going to give us our best center shot initially, assuming that the riser is square. That'll be a good starting point right there. For those of you without a press, you do have the option of using their version of a football. It's simple. 2 screws, attach it to your cable, and then there's a set screw with a hole to run your cable through. I prefer to tie them through the cable myself, so we're going to go ahead and do that on this one, but you do have that option for those of you without a bow press. So on their football system, you can see there's 2 small Phillips heads here. You're just going to back those out, attach it to the cable. I can spin the bow here so you can see. You'd attach it. You'd still want to have an anchor so that to prevent it from sliding out, so we would attach it right below the serving there. Then there's a hole through this that you can run your cord with a set screw on the top. So you're just going to run that through there. You would draw the bow, set your timing, and then lock that set screw in once you get it where you want it. Pretty simple. If there's any confusion on that setup or any of the initial setup on this rest, there will be instructions in the box, in the package with the rest when you buy it. These rests are going to come with a launch pad for the shelf. I typically like to wait till the end of the tuning process to put that on, and just in case we end up fudging that center shot a little bit, I like to put this on after. That way the arrow's sitting right in the center. You don't have to lift it off on an angle or anything like that. All right, we're going to take it to the press and hook the cord up and get her timed up. So this rest actually has the ability to set the timing right at the rest. So I'm actually going to burn the end and tie a knot through the cable now, and then pull my slack through at the rest and then draw it to set the timing after we get that done. We're just going to go ahead and slip that through the center of the cables. I try to usually separate it in equal sides so it's just balanced. I don't know that it's that critical, but I always try to. Looks a little better that way too. I just did whatever, half hitch, overhand, just 1 knot, just so that it can't pull through. A lot of guys will just melt the end. I've seen them pull through and pull the ends off, so I like to at least have a knot there. I've seen guys wrap it multiple times and almost tie like a D-loop knot too, but that's really all you need underneath that anchor there. It's not going anywhere. Even if it did slide down, if you were to draw the bow, it's going to slide right back to where it needs to be. So you don't really need that knot below either, in my opinion. I've seen guys do that as well. It doesn't hurt anything. It just makes it a little harder to get a new cord in if you're going to change that out. So we're going to go over here. We're going to loosen the cord up at the rest, draw the bow, and set the timing back in the range. Got a set screw right on the side that you can loosen with an Allen here. I like to pull it through where I know it's going to be too short. And then I'll tighten this slightly, enough where it grabs the cord, but the cord can still slide through. About like that. And I'll put an arrow in the bow and we'll go back to the range and draw it. And just 1 draw should set that cord right where it needs to be. Cool thing on this rest is you actually have a range here. Another feature I like on this rest, this style of rest versus some of the competitors, is that it doesn't bottom out. You have a range here. As long as you're in that range, the arrow rest will function properly. So you're never fighting the cables. A lot of other rests, they bottom out and anchor in, so this cord actually gets tight, fights your cams. And that's one of the drawbacks of some of the cable-driven rests when you compare them to some of like the limb-driven rests now, where this one doesn't have that feature. So it's not going to fight your cam, and it's not going to affect your timing like some of the other arrow rests on the market will. So now we're just going to draw this. I always like to put an arrow in at the first draw just in case something happens. You never know. We're going to draw this. This cord should pull through this, when we get in our range and go right to the length we need. Then we just got to lock that set screw in hard. Let it down. Now we can just set that set screw and our timing should be done. All right, now that we drew the bow and we set the length of the cord for the appropriate timing, all we got to do is lock this set screw in. And we should be good to start shooting this thing. I am going to add that launch pad on after we shoot like we talked about earlier, but we're going to go over there and shoot a couple arrows just to make sure everything's functioning the way it should be. You can trim this tag end off if you want. I would leave a little bit just in case you ever change draw lengths or the cord stretches or anything like that and you need to play with that timing anymore, but I usually leave, maybe 1/2 inch tops there. But we should be good to go start shooting. All right, normally I would have the customer shoot this bow, but Wes is dealing with a shoulder injury right now. This bow is a long draw, so I'm going to look a little bit goofy shooting it, but we're going to do the best we can here just to make sure everything's working right. Just looking at these first two initial shots, it looks like we might be getting a little bit of tail left, so we're probably going to have to mess with that center shot or do a little bit of yoke tuning on this bow. But the rest is performing as should. You can see it's in the down position. It's quiet, not making any slapping noises, not slapping the shelf too bad. We are going to add that pad to minimize it if it is a little bit, but I think we got a good initial setup here and we can just start tuning from here. All right, so we just took a couple shots back there. It looks like we're getting a little bit of tail left back there, so we're going to fudge this rest in. I had it closer to 7/8. I think we're going to move it in closer to 3/16. And you got a couple good options here. You got beefy bolt on the top with, you know, well marked lines here. You do not have micro adjust on this rest. That helps keep the price point where it's at. But you have real defined marks here to go off of, and if you need to go beyond that, you have Allens on the bottom of the launcher as well that you can slide back and forth across this rail here. So you have a ton of adjustability on this rest. Same thing vertically, you know, beefy 5/32 Allen. You're not going to strip those out unless you're really being aggressive with it. Looks like everything's lined up now. We're going to go ahead and install that shelf pad now that we got the center shot where we want it. Same thing I did on the launcher. I like to clean the shelf with a little bit of rubbing alcohol to get that adhesive to stick better. Go ahead and clean that. And I like to lay it on there dry just to make sure it's fitting right and we don't have anything overhanging. Sometimes I'll trim them a little bit. This one looks like it's going to fit pretty good as is, so we're going to go ahead and stick it on there. Got her lined up there, and at that point you're pretty much ready to start sighting her in. All right, for those of you that don't have paper to shoot through, you know, and you want to make sure the rest is in a good position at home, you know, whether you do a walk back tune or bear shaft. Bear shaft's an easy way to see which way your tail's going without having paper, because it really shows up, especially when you start walking back to 10-20 yards. So that's probably my preferred at-home method if you don't have paper. At this point you're pretty much ready to start shooting. Again, easy rest to set up. Some of the features that I like a lot about this versus the competitors is the fact that the launcher doesn't move ever throughout the shot cycle until it fires. There's no movement whatsoever, and the fact that this cord doesn't ever bury completely out, you know, so that's really big for cam timing, tuning issues, stuff like that other rests, you know, similar rests struggle with. Another thing I like about this rest is that we're coming in at a real competitive price point in the market now at $179, so we're not breaking the bank with some of these $300 rests out there.
Just tell them what you know about
Right on cue, UPS dropped off a couple Redline boxes for us.